You best tell your friends the Cincinnati Reds are back up.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another late night emergency edition of the Locked On Reds podcast. We are your daily source for all things Cincinnati Reds. I'm Stephen Offenbaker. He's Jeff Carr. We have a combined 12 years of experience covering the Cincinnati Reds. We love baseball. We love these Cincinnati Reds, and we love Francona. That's right. We are here live because the Cincinnati Reds, they wasted little time, Jeff. They hired their manager. Terry Francona is now back in a Cincinnati Reds uniform. I am super excited. We're going to get into all of the nuts and bolts of the instant reaction of all of that on today's live Locked On Reds that is brought to you by Booking.com. This episode is brought to you by those great folks over there at Booking.com. Booking.yeah, the right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your baseball rivals. Book today on Booking.com, the official accommodation partner of Major League Baseball. Get the Booking.com app today as well. All right, Jeff, they did it. We've talked about this on a couple shows last week and this week that you wanted it to be Francona. I wasn't sure they would go that route. I didn't think Terry Francona would come out of retirement for the Cincinnati Reds situation specifically, but the lobbying, the background noise started to heat up over the last couple days, and here we are. The Reds have pulled the trigger. Terry Francona coming back to the Queen City as the manager of our Cincinnati Reds.
The Cincinnati Reds made the best possible hire. The Cincinnati Reds got the best possible guy. When have we been able to say that? I don't, it's been a long time. Like, you got to go back to like Griffey for that to be the case. Like this is the absolute home run that we all hoped for. But quite frankly, I feel like if we said it, if we spoke it into existence, if we said, yes, this is what's going to happen, even the most staunch of optimists, including myself, were looking around like, oh, I don't know, like this team, is this team really going to do this? They did it. They signed him for 3 years. Terry Francona will be the manager of your Cincinnati Reds for the next 3 seasons at least. And Steve, for me, the first and foremost thing with this, I start off with the fact that you're not getting Terry Francona without some assurances. Like when they talked with him, when Nick Kroll had his conversations with him, Terry Francona, one of the first questions he's probably asking is, all right, so what's our budget here? What are we talking about? Who are we signing? And if Nick Kroll came back and said, well, we're talking to Adam Duvall and we're talking Francona would have got up and walked out that door. Like, he has to have had some sort of conversation that says, like, look, we are serious about this. We are making an investment in this organization. And I know that the news about Bally Sports, and that's something that we will eventually talk about with how this affects the Cincinnati Reds. But it's clear that it doesn't affect them enough to run Terry Francona out the door. And that is super encouraging, because I don't think he comes here and they're just saying, yeah, we're going to run back this roster and we think that all we need is you.
Another thing that I think had to have been said, had to have been discussed, and had to have been answered for Terry Francona is gone. I think is going to be the lineup by committee. Gone is going we're going to get in a room and everybody's going to have a say and we'll pull names out of a hat. That crap's out the window. Terry Francona is going to make this lineup. He is going to put the best team on the field that he thinks he can put on the field. He has a reputation to protect, and he has standards to maintain. And I am super excited about this, Jeff. I want to get to this also very, very quickly. I spent a lot of time talking to John Sadak today. Before this news broke, we kicked around a lot of options. That full interview, we're going to save that for Monday now. We're not going to get into the nuts and bolts of that. But at the time, the Reds didn't have a manager. And I asked John Sadak if he was going to be able to make the pick, who would he pick? This is what he said.
Terry Francona would be top of my list. The guy's won, and he's won in big markets and small markets. He's played for the Reds. I think there's a lot of cachet that comes with him. He would just scream home run to me in almost every way.
There you go. And that's basically the same thing you were saying.
Well, and to be honest with you, I was saying it because I'm like, okay, so many people are talking about this. Marty Brenneman's talking about this, and I had seen some other folks writing about this and stuff, and I'm like, they don't just talk, right? Like they don't just say things out into the ether without having a semblance of some knowledge of what's going on here. Like Marty Brenneman's not going out there and saying, well, yeah, Juan Soto would be the best deal here, or they're going to go trade for Brent Rooker or something like that. Like this is what it is. And we go from Jar Jar Binks, Chris saying we go from Jar Jar Binks to Qui-Gon Jinn. I like that. But I cannot emphasize enough all of the different things, and we're going to get into the multiple levels of goodness for this deal. But on the surface of this, Terry Francona, best possible hire that the Cincinnati Reds can make. And his resume, just in case you are not familiar with it, he has won 2 World Series with the Boston Red Sox. He broke the curse. He took the Cleveland Guardians, at the time the Cleveland Indians, to Game 7 of the 2016 World Series with the Chicago Cubs, that close to breaking their curse. He is a super successful postseason manager, and oh, by the way, has a winning record for his entire career and has managed over 3,000 games. I said I wanted experience. This is the most experience with the best possible outcome that the Cincinnati Reds could have gotten this offseason. Look, they're not done. There's lots that we still have to do, but this is a massive step toward a A-plus offseason.
Yeah, you're talking about a manager now, Jeff, that has 10 years of big league experience. Check that box. That's something we both said
Huge.
That the manager needed to have. Here's the second part of it. He's right on the edge, right on the cusp of what I was talking about with the Reds needing to hire a manager that was of the next generation. While Terry Francona has an extensive managerial career that you just covered, from 1997 to 2023, he's managed in the big leagues, or coached in the big leagues. He played in 1990. He was still a player in 1990. So he's of that right age group where I think he has been able to navigate and embrace the changes of baseball and will be able to still lean into the analytics and still use the information. But a 10-year big leaguer, he's going to be able to also use the eye test and rely on scouts and take into account what's happening right in front of him, recognize when a guy is on a hot streak and not set him down in the middle of it. David Bell, are you freaking listening? You don't sit a guy down in the middle of a hot streak. Terry Francona checks most of the boxes. I mean, quite honestly, I didn't lean in on this at all when we had these conversations, Jeff, because I didn't think they could get him. I didn't think that they would be able to say the requisite things to keep him from walking out of the room. I didn't think that, you would get a guy who leaves because he wanted to rest and recover and work on his health. And I don't know where that is. I'm sure it's going to be addressed at the press conference when the Reds roll him out. They're going to talk about this and we'll get the answers about his health, where it was and where it's at right now. I'm not even going to speculate on that, but I didn't think the Reds could pull this off, which is why I didn't lean into it. I thought it was going to be Barry Larkin if he wanted it. And if Barry Larkin didn't want it, it was going to be one of those other guys, the David Ross, the Schumachers, somebody in those lanes. This is big. This is a big swing by Nick Krall. And I think, you and I have talked more off the air than on about how much pressure is going to be on Nick Krall in the 2025 baseball season to deliver a playoff team. And this to me says Nick Krall is going all in on delivering a playoff team. I think Santander's on the table. I think they're going to go get a big, bad outfield bat now. I don't think that they hire Terry Francona and Terry Francona signs that contract without the assurances that you mentioned just a few moments ago being on the table. And I think the Reds are going for it.
And look, they still got to prove it, right? But this is such a good sign that we're at least on the doorstep. We're getting ready to open the door. The chance is there. And just one other thing, in case you were not sure, I don't know why you wouldn't be. Terry Francona has had an amazing career as a manager, but consider this: from 2004 to 2020. And there was just 1 year in there where he actually took a year off in between the Red Sox and Cleveland. He went from 2004 to 2020. All of them were winning seasons. There wasn't one where it was just maybe. All of them were winning seasons. He was in the playoffs so very many times. And I'm stunned, dude. Like, he was on my list. He was at the top of my list because it's obvious that he should be at the top of my list. I am stunned that the Reds actually got this done. That is where I'm at with this. Like, I'm so deliriously happy with this. And look, I'm not saying that the Reds have already won the offseason. There's still plenty to talk about with that. But let's kind of dive into this a little bit more. What this signals for the Reds offseason. We'll do that coming up next. When life gets busy, fitting in a workout can be stressful. With Tonal, you can get efficient workouts personalized just for you and are available with the amount of time that you have. Tonal is the world's smartest and most effective strength training system that helps you get stronger. Powered by AI, Tonal learns every rep so it can deliver workouts personalized just for you. Tonal learns from your movements and provides suggested weight recommendations for every move with detailed progress reports. They even create personalized program and workout suggestions or recommendations based on your individual goals. It's like having a personal trainer right in your own home because Tonal will optimize every workout just for you. Right now, Tonal is offering our listeners $200 off your Tonal purchase with promo code LOCKEDONMLB. That's Tonal.com and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $200 off your purchase. Again, Tonal.com, promo code LOCKEDONMLB, and you'll get $200 off Tonal. We are talking Cincinnati Reds baseball today. All day, every week, every month, all year long. Make sure that you subscribe to get at least 30 minutes of Reds talk on your feed every single day, all throughout the offseason, getting you ready for the 2025 season that we are back up on. This hire, the hire of Terry Francona to a 3-year contract to be the next manager of the Cincinnati Reds is such a huge move. And look, it's the beginning. And we have gone on record, and I'm not trying to sit here and tell you that because they hired X manager, they are now the best team in baseball. We have gone on record in saying that the manager is not as important as the players on the field. I still maintain that with Terry Francona. You still have to go fill some holes. But Terry Francona is not sitting on the other side of that desk without those sort of assurances. And with him being out there and going to make the lineups on the field, he's going to make the roster changes, the line, the bullpen changes, all this other stuff. He is going to want the best possible guys that he can get. This is not going to be something that Nick Krall is going to be picking up guys off of the waiver wire and the veteran minimum free agent heap and all this other stuff. Like, they are going to go out and get some legitimate guys. We can talk about a offseason wish list and maybe not even use the term wish list and change it to shopping list.
I think that this definitely is going to give the Reds more credibility when they do have those conversations with free agents and the agents for potential free agent acquisitions. It's going to signal a shift in Cincinnati. It's going to signal that the Reds are trying to put a playoff team together. So I think that helps them. Now, and I see you guys in the chat, and it's very easy for this to now. We've got Terry. Let's talk about who they're going to sign. We're not quite there yet. We're talking about Terry tonight, but I will say I see you guys in the chat talking about, bring on Juan Soto, and there's a whole back and forth.
We've got a lot coming up with that next week for sure. Absolutely.
About who they can, if they can afford Juan Soto or not, who they can get. We're going to get into all that, but I think when you go reach out to Santander, and I think that's probably going to be the number one outfield target, because I agree with what's being said that we'll get into next week. They're not going to be able to afford Juan Soto, but this gives you credibility. This I think gets players to at least listen that might not necessarily have listened if David Bell was still here, that might not necessarily have listened if there wasn't some major shakeup of the organization to make a player believe things are going to be different in 2025. Terry Francona coming out of retirement, coming back into the dugout, putting a Reds uniform back on, tells me things are going to be different. And that, I think, is the biggest takeaway from this hiring. Never mind his successes. Never mind. He just brings the feel of credibility. He brings an air of the front office gets it. The dugout is going to get it. They know the fans in Cincinnati get it. It's a great place to play as far as being a player and having this city love you. So for me, this is the perfect start now, because as this playoff run winds down and we get through the World Series and free agency opens, the Reds are going to be able to hit the ground running with a package in place, a pitch in place to be able to take to these free agents that they've been kind of sleeping on for a couple of years now. The power hitting outfielder, maybe not pitching upgrade, whatever it is they do. Right. This brings credibility, and that's what's been lacking around here for a long, long time.
But also on the opposite side of that, the players that are already here, like Terry Francona has such a huge reputation, not just for winning, but for getting the best out of his guys and taking the roster that you have in place. And while, yeah, it's important to get some good dudes in there, it's also important to really make sure that the guys you got are maximized. And Terry Francona knows how to do that. He's done that both with Boston and with Cleveland for the better part of the last 25 years. Like, we're not talking about a guy like you and I were doing this, and especially off air, we're doing the thing where it's like, well, this guy, while he was a player, he saw some success, and whether this other guy, he managed with this other manager, and they might have touched hands one time when they were going for a coffee cup, and maybe some of his success rubbed off on him. No, Terry Francona is the success. There is no squinting. There is no, maybe this guy can do it. We know he's done it. Now we just got to see how he can do it here. How can he be empowered here? But I do, and that's the thing here, is that part of this is, yes, there's still work to do for Nick Krall and for the ownership group and things like this, but we got to give him a little bit of flowers for actually going out and doing something, right? Like, they did the right thing. They did the thing that none of us thought they would, because we all expected, and look, Skip Schumacher would have been fine, but I am nowhere, I would not be anywhere as excited about Skip Schumacher as I am with Terry Francona. They did the right thing here.
Yeah, another interesting thing we haven't hit on here with his previous managerial stops, Jeff, first, Philadelphia, big market. Boston, big market. It'd be very easy to say, well, anybody can manage to a World Series and have success if you're in a big market where they're spending tons of money.
Right.
He goes to Cleveland. Cleveland is not a big market. Cleveland is not a go out and buy whatever player that you need. And I'm looking through his records during his time as a manager of the Cleveland Indians and then the Cleveland Guardians. And you're looking 92 win season, 93 win season, 91, 102 win season, 94 win season, another 92 win season. Small market Cleveland. He's going to be able to come into Cincinnati with this talent, with this team that is just primed and ready for somebody to guide them, and he's going to be able to win a lot of baseball games.
Can you imagine the first time that he's like talking to Ellie about something and maybe trying to tweak something with his game a little bit, and he just drops in there, when I was talking to Jose Ramirez about this, then everyone should shut up, because Jose Ramirez is one of the best players in this game, probably top 5, maybe top 3, depending on how you argue that. But he's going to be able to say, when I did this with J-Ram, like when you go back, when I did this with David Ortiz, when I did this with Manny Ramirez, think of like some huge stars in this game over the last 25 years. Terry Francona has managed those guys, and he's managed them at the highest of levels. And I really love, and I've read a bunch of different things about, his personality and stuff like this. And while he's not a guy that's going to get on the mic and be like, well, yeah, I know he's really, he's got to fix that. He's not going to do that in a press conference. I know for a fact he knows how to get the best out of his guys. I'm not worried about that. All I want is winning. And the Reds have not had that guy. The Reds have had David Bell, who just began his managerial career. They had Brian Price, who just began his managerial career. They had Jim Riggleman, who was just a bench coach, and they had him as an interim. And Dusty Baker, you got to go back to him before you get to the first legitimate manager. And I think Terry Francona is better than Dusty Baker.
Wow. Okay. Jeff throwing some hot takes out there. All right. I like what you're throwing down. I think that there are definitely different styles of managers. I agree with you that Terry Francona is not going to come out and necessarily rip a guy in a press conference. I do believe that Terry Francona will be highly, at least much more inclined to answer direct questions directly than David Bell ever was. And this I know with certainty. Terry Francona will have no problem calling a guy into his office and telling him to get his crap together. There will not be a problem with that. And I think that is probably the element that was missing most in all of what the Reds coaching staff was doing last season. There was nobody calling a player into an office and holding them accountable. I didn't necessarily need David Bell in a camera saying Ellie had an error. It's terrible. I'm going to move his ass to right field if he doesn't get it together. Like, that's not what I'm saying. But at some point in time, someone should have called Ellie in an office and said, maybe in the 8th inning, not get thrown out at third base with less than 2 out, set some guidelines. And David Bell completely failed at that. Terry Francona will not fail at that.
No, not at all. And I find it interesting of what this decision means. So we talked a little bit about, we're excited about what it means moving forward. I also kind of like what the things that they didn't do with this decision, what those meant. We'll talk about that coming up next.
This episode of Locked On Reds is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.yeah, with the baseball playoffs upon us, it's perfect time for you to go explore one of those playoff cities that you've always secretly kind of wanted to visit and learn about. And Booking.com has you covered with hotels, bed and breakfast, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more on Booking.com. You just might find your perfect stay, even if it's in a city that you're not normally watching baseball in. If you want to check out the Phillies, if you want to check out one of these baseball powerhouses, maybe head to New York and check out the Yankees, Booking.com is going to have you covered. From hotels that look over stadiums to family-friendly resorts, Booking.com has so many choices across the United States for your baseball playoff travel this MLB postseason. The right stay can make you a fan of any U.S. city, even one of the playoff teams that are lucky enough to be in the show, and the Reds are not. Book your stay today at Booking.com, or you can download the Booking.com app.
Make sure you subscribe to Locked On Reds because we're going to be with you all off season long. And like Steve mentioned earlier in the show, he's got a great conversation with John Sadak that's going to be coming up for you on Monday. So make sure that you don't miss that one as well. We've got a lot of great stuff earlier on this week. I mean, it feels like it's been a throw out the rundown kind of week. Had a great episode just talking about Pete Rose. We had a couple of episodes that were talking about managerial stuff, but there was also an episode we talked a lot about the Sonny Gray rumors and why we hate them. So if you missed all that, make sure you go check that out. But one of the other part of this decision is the other decisions that didn't happen. And you and I kind of talked a little bit off air about Gordon Wittenmeyer's article that said when he was talking with Nick Krall, and Nick Krall said that Barry Larkin was not a candidate. We had talked a lot about the fact that if he was interested, it kind of felt like this was being set up for him. It is clear now that it was all set up all along for Terry Francona. So I kind of find this interesting that this decision was not meant for Barry Larkin.
Yeah, and Barry's been really consistent in what he said about being the manager. And this is what I said earlier in the week, right? We needed Barry to look in a camera and say what's what. And Barry never did that. And the reason that Barry never did that is Barry's position has not changed. I've seen some stuff go by in the comment section here, Jeff, about think maybe Barry could be involved in this coaching staff. I think Barry will still go to spring training and do what he's always done. I think Barry has a pretty sweet gig right now, guys. He gets paid to do the home games. He sits at home when they're on the road. He doesn't have to do the hotel thing. Barry's got it good right now. And I think Terry Francona is going to build a coaching staff that is top notch. It's going to have a lot of credibility. I'm looking forward to see what he does. To your point, though, Jeff, I want to know, and I don't know if we'll know. I don't know if it will come out, but I would love to know when conversations with Terry Francona began. For a guy that was supposedly in medical retirement to get hired this quick, it had to have happened immediately at the David Bell firing or prior. It didn't happen this week.
It makes sense because the way that Nick Krall handled the David Bell firing press conference, where he said, yeah, we're going to take the road trip to talk to some people. And then after the road trip was over, he was talking with reporters and he said, yeah, we're going to get back on Monday and we're going to get set up and we're going to get rolling. It's like, yeah, there was something else going on. Like they weren't just, he almost sort of played it like the, like aloof guys, just like, yeah, we're going to get a manager at some point. We'll find some people that know baseball and, we'll bring him in. Like, no, feels like they had a good feeling on this one. And really, you can go back to the reports, and I reiterate this because we mentioned it on an earlier show this week. It was Tim Kirkjian that was talking on a primetime baseball game on ESPN, and he had mentioned that he was talking with Terry Francona back in April. And when it was, even just the beginning of the season, he said, yeah, Terry Francona's interested in returning to the game, although he set forth the timeline that really sounded more like 2026, not 2025. But maybe at that point, Nick Krall was like, and then May happened, and nothing happened, and the team just flatlined, and it felt like they had fallen out of the playoff race. And as much as they tried to claw their way back in through June and July, I think Nick Krall was just going all along, I got that number for Terry. Let me make a call here. Like I think that is why, just the awkward timing, giving him a week, like you're firing him a week left and giving Freddie Benavides,
Do you think Marty had talked to Terry before he did that interview? I think Marty probably talked to Terry before he did that interview.
I mean, we know he has influence behind the scenes, so that definitely could be. I mean, like I said, like Marty's not throwing Terry Francona's name out there if he doesn't know something.
All right, Jeff, I know it's after midnight already, East Coast time on a Thursday night. By the way, we just rolled out of your birthday. Happy birthday. I know you were in birthday revelry mode all day. So happy birthday from Nick Krall and the Cincinnati Reds on this managerial hire. Yeah. But before we get out of here, let's get to some of the comments in the comment section. I've been throwing them up on the screen throughout, but we can take a few and directly get into them. This from our good buddy and Discord moderator Josh. Josh says, this is exactly the culture change that we all wanted. I haven't felt this good about the Reds, and I don't know how many years. Literally cried a little bit when I saw the news. So happy. I would be lying, Jeff. I'd be lying if I said I didn't think that there was at least a 30% chance that Nick Krall screwed this up. I'd be lying if I said I didn't have that in my heart as a Cincinnati sports fan, and they didn't screw it up. And I feel both ecstatic and relieved that they got this thing right.
And I kind of feel like where we were sort of bandying about the idea, and this was definitely going to be a podcast topic next week, had they not made a decision yet, is this kind of like Nick Krall's job is on the line if this managerial hire doesn't pan out? Well, you know what you do if your back's against the wall and you need to make the right decision? You find the guy at the top of the list and you're just like, come on, dude, we'll figure it out. You come on in, we'll figure this thing out. You can do the managing part of things. I kind of think, and kind of to Josh's point, like this shows the restructuring. Nick Krall is going to let the baseball people in the dugout do their thing. He's going to do his thing in the front office. He's going to build the roster, and he's going to let Tito manage it. He's going to let him employ the players where they need to be, and he's not going to have the sort of hand in it that I think this team was being ran as for the last couple of years.
Malachi Hayes checks in, and I'm with him in this where my thoughts are. Malachi says, I wonder if Scott Boras' opinion of the Reds will change. Let's open this up past Scott Boras. I hit on this briefly there a little further back in the show. I think it's going to give credibility to the Reds in the eyes of the player and their representatives that the Reds are at least semi-serious about not being status quo, that the Reds are looking to do something different. The Reds are looking to build a winner. So if you have a client, at the end of the day, it's all going to come down to the money, right? And the hiring of Francona doesn't necessarily say, well, the Reds are going to spend $80 million this offseason. We don't know that. Right. But what it does say is that if you're in a conversation with them and they've got the money right, and it's down to your player wanting to be someplace where they have an opportunity to play in the playoffs, where they want to be in a place to have an opportunity to play for a good organization and get some national exposure and make a deep postseason run, the hiring of Terry Francona puts you on the right footing. It puts you in the right place to make that pitch, to make that argument and be taken seriously, not being laughed out of the room, not having the guy across from the table smirk at you and be like, yeah, what have you guys done to improve things? I think this helps, not so much with the money, but it does help with the credibility. And now we need to wait and see if they're willing to write some checks. But I think this helps, Malachi. I think it does.
Yeah, the prestige of the clubhouse and the prestige of the dugout just got a whole lot better bringing in Terry Francona. And to another point, and we mentioned this just briefly a few minutes ago, but I just kind of wanted to reiterate this, like, the whole idea that we had where we found ourselves falling down some sort of rabbit hole where we were talking about a bunch of former players making up the management squad for this, that's not happening now. Terry Francona is going to go get his guys who he knows can do the thing, and he's going to bring them in, and they're all going to work. I think Derek Johnson is remaining on the team, but everybody else, I think he's going to kind of mold into his staff.
Yeah, that's actually the next question from Marcus here. Do we think that Derek Johnson stays on the staff, or will this be a complete teardown in the coaching staff? I think it's going to be, let's call it 75%. I think a few guys will stick around. I think that Derek Johnson is one of the guys that's going to stick around. Number one, they gave him a lot of money and he's under contract to do that job, not only of being the pitching coach, but being the pitching guru, coordinator, direction setter for every pitcher from Cincinnati to Daytona, the entire system. So I don't see a change being made there. Now, it's quite possible everybody else loses their job and Terry Francona brings in his own people. I can't think, is there anybody else on the coaching staff, Jeff, that you would say that guy's almost a shoe-in to stay no matter what?
I can't put my finger on exactly how that would go down, because I just feel like there are certain guys that a manager knows he can work with, and he's going to bring in those guys. You might see like Colin Cowgill. I think Colin Cowgill's done a fantastic job. There were some publications that were listing him as like a dark horse candidate to maybe get the job as manager. I didn't really think that was a real possibility, but it's just kind of, giving him flowers for what he has done as an assistant coach on this team. There's a chance he probably stays. But I don't know that there's going to be a lot. I mean, they're going to have a different hitting coach. They're going to have a different philosophy with that. Like, I firmly believe that this change doesn't just happen in the one seat. There's going to be a lot more seats change hands.
Yeah, I think that it's probably safe to say that Freddie Benavidez will move on. Terry's going to bring in his own bench coach. I'm not sure J.R. House will be back. I can see Terry bringing in his own guy to be the third base coach. And, the catchers do love working with J.R. House. So maybe there's an maybe there's an opportunity for him to stay, but by and large, outside of Derek Johnson, I think it's a coin flip whether anybody else on this staff is here to start the 2025 season. And I don't think that that's a bad thing either.
And I think we're starting from, and look, we live in a society that you're innocent until proven guilty. We're starting from a point here. Thank you, Pierre. Appreciate the happy birthday wish there. We're starting from this thought process that it's like, all right, if Terry Francona is going to make a decision, it's probably the right decision. So right now he's in the honeymoon phase. So whatever coaching staff he brings in, I'm okay with that because I know that he knows what's up. And so until I'm proven wrong, like that's what I'm looking forward to here.
I'm going to go with this comment just because I thought the same thing when you started talking about us having our little dream fest of former players. Maybe we can start this campaign, gang, because I want this to happen too. I want to see Eric Davis. I want to see Eric Davis involved with this team somehow on an everyday basis. I don't care what job they give him. But I would really,
like first base.
Could you imagine? Yeah, just see Eric out on the field every day, being cool. I'm all for it. Letting him and Ellie both wear number 44. That's also a condition of his employment. I think it has to be. I would love that. I love Eric Davis for sure.
Just make sure like one's one color, one's the other color, because other people are gonna like lose their minds.
Get a little confused.
Red 44s out there. Yeah.
All
it's not gonna be like college football where it's like one on offense, one on defense. Like you've gotta have a delineation there.
Yeah, and there's some Eric Davis. We're not alone in wanting Eric Davis. I'm trying to find. There's lots going on in
time.
This
I mean, he's worked a lot of spring training. He's put in his time. So there's definitely a chance because look, Terry Francona. That's the other part of this is that as much as he is so successful at other places and he's had this long career, he has Reds ties. We're not talking about a guy that doesn't understand the city. Like, he kind of understands what baseball means to this town. And that's not like a super necessary trait to have as a manager, but it's kind of nice, and I kind of gravitate toward that sort of thing. So he understands what Eric Davis means to this town. So I could see him being part of the coaching staff.
Yeah, I think, Jeff, where are we at right now? We're coming up on midnight 30. Let's get one or two more in, and then we'll call it
Appreciate
a night.
Everybody jumping in.
I
mean, this is
for
exciting
Monday.
news. We wanted to get talking. I'm glad that got the chance to talk with some folks, and the comment section has been super active. Appreciate y'all doing that.
We got guys checking in from Arkansas. Greg here is a lifer of a Reds fan. Reds need a no-nonsense leader. I think that's Terry. I really do. You know, I guess this is true too. Whatever Francona does, it can't be worse than Bell. I mean, right now, the bar is not set incredibly high. I think that is probably a fair statement of the current situation, Jeff. Like, you really got to go up from here.
That's kind of the other side of that coin, right? Like we talked about, man, he probably had to have some assurances. I can't say that word tonight. He probably had to have some of those to sign on with the Reds. But on the other end of the spectrum, he's got to be like, I'm playing with house money coming into Cincinnati here. They're looking for a leader, and I'm ready to go.
Sandy Alomar Jr., Mick says, was Tito's first base coach and catching coach in Cleveland for 10 years. That's the kind of stuff I think you're talking about, Jeff. He has guys that he's worked with a long time. We could see a reappearance of a lot of the guys. Yeah, we could totally see that. I definitely
It's really going to put, and actually, by the way, shout out to our Locked On Guardians host, Justin Latta. Actually, he was the guy that broke the news to me. I wasn't even on Twitter at the moment whenever the news happened. He texted me and he's just like, wow, great get for Cincy getting Tito. And I'm like, don't you mess with it. Don't you do it, man. And then, of course, confirming it through multiple different sources, and Jeff Passan and Mark Feinsand and all those guys. But it's like, wow, like they're the Cincinnati is in Kentucky t-shirts. I wonder how long those are going to last.
Randy says, I knew Bell was gone when you guys played David Bell bingo at the press conference. Yeah. Jeff was ultimately the driving force behind Nick
It
Cross.
took so long to put together.
I'm
so bummed I only got to do that once. I should have done that way earlier in the season.
All right, we're going to end with one more from Leon Case, who says, happy birthday, Mr. Carr. And Jeff, I think that is a good spot to go ahead and wrap it up for tonight, folks. We are going to be all over this next week. The Reds, I am assuming, will have a press conference sometime tomorrow. Monday's episode's already done, gang. We are an interview with John Sadak. Jeff and I, if anything major comes out of that press conference, you may find us again this weekend doing a show, but we're going to have you covered all next week as this news continues to unfold and as we learn more about not only what Francona thinks about this Cincinnati Reds team, but what Nick Krall says this team is going to do from here. And with that being said, Jeff Carr, birthday boy, get us out of here.
Thanks, everybody, for checking us out on this live edition of Locked On Reds and the awesome news that we've got. Make sure that you subscribe because we got a lot more news. I got to believe that this is only just the beginning of awesome news this offseason. You're going to want to make sure you're with us every single day, every step of the way. So subscribe here on YouTube or if you're listening on your favorite podcasting app as well. And now, by the way, there's a great link down in the description to Locked On MLB as Sully's got you covered all throughout the playoffs. A lot of great stuff happening. Mets beat the Brewers on a crazy late game comeback. Sully's going to have a ton of reaction to that and all the sweeps and all that other stuff happening in the wild card. So make sure you click on that link down below to make Locked On MLB your second listen. But as for Steve and myself, we will be Locked On Reds every single day.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. You're almost 40.
Whatever. They hired Tito. You can't bum me out. Can't bum me out.